they saved about 80 lives. People from Zikim have also said that their lives were saved because of the actions of the people in Yiftach. They're real heroes. Those soldiers. They really, quick as a flash, just jumped to save lives. And also, their legacy, when please God we are victorious and we do win this war, their legacy is that they were the start of the story.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Anything But Traditional. I'm here today with Eliot Young. His mother-in-law and father-in-law go way, way back with my stepdad. And yeah, I've known his wife, Rena, for forever. He grew up in Southgate in North London, and his family was very involved in the small Jewish community there, including having a Shabbat table full of guests every week. Before making Aliyah in 2013, Elliot was a youth director for a couple of communities in North London. Elliot lives in Jerusalem with his wife, Rena, and 3 daughters, Emunah, Hallel, and Nili, and works in marketing. And I'm so happy to have you on today to not just talk about your brother, who unfortunately was killed on October 7th, but to hear your story, hear your family story, hear about who you guys are. I know that you were just saying that you guys became a little bit of a British media sensation. And yeah, so there's a lot of things that, have happened since October 7th, but let's go back to before October 7th, way back to before October 7th. And I'd love to hear, how did you grow up and what was your family like?
So I grew up in, like you said, in a small Jewish community in North London, and I was, not far from the places people outside of England might have heard of, like Hendon, Golders Green, Edgware. I went to school to Hasmonean in Hendon, and I was very much part of this like amazing small community. Not everyone who went to shul was Shomer Shabbat. Some people drove to shul, and I actually quite like that. We were the religious family. My parents were an influence on a lot of people. There were a lot of people who came regularly and wanted the Shabbat meals, and Friday nights my dad always brought people home afterwards, and those kind of things had, I guess, a big influence on me now that I have my own family. And I also myself became quite involved in the community. I was Rosh Sniff of the B'nai Akiva in a community like Southgate. There wasn't always a B'nai Akiva, so that was firstly quite fun because I was, doing it with my friends in the area. And the people running it were also not all of them were religious, so I quite liked that idea. I don't know if I thought about it so much as a 17-year-old. And then I continued to be involved in the community. Went to yeshiva for a couple of years
You
to
went to
Nativ.
Nativ. Great.
Nativ Aryeh, yeah. I was in Nativ Aryeh for 2 years, and while I was Nativ, very nearly made Aliyah from Nativ. I kind of wanted to be 100% sure, and I didn't feel quite ready, so I went back to England, and while I was in England, I spent all my spare money flying to Israel whenever I could. Israel was clearly my home, and I just told people as soon as I finished with this degree, I'm moving to Israel. Yeah, and I'm lucky enough to have made these amazing friends in high school that a lot of them have made Aliyah, and I'm still in regular
Oh,
contact with
amazing.
them. And I'm one of those people that speaks to friends on the phone and regularly and for a long time, and sometimes sleep deprived because of it. So I'm very lucky that I have these really good friends from my high school and also my elementary school, primary school called in England, that I'm still in touch with today.
Nice. So there's a lot to unpack here. I wanted to ask you first, did you ever think about going into the army when you went to Nativ Aryeh?
Absolutely. I mean, while I was in yeshiva, my older brother, he made Aliyah at the age of 17, was in Sanchanim in the paratroopers, and he actually was while I was in yeshiva, there was the 2008 war in Gaza, and he was there. We didn't have contact with him for 3 weeks. It was very
Wow.
scary and stressful. And obviously, it was on my mind. And I can't tell you exactly, I think I was totally accepting of if I make Aliyah now, I'm joining the army. And actually, when I made Aliyah at the age of 24, you do 6 months army. The army, I went to my Savrishon to the assessment, and due to some back issues, I was given a profile that meant I had a pator, an exemption. So I didn't actually, in the end, join the army. But yeah, it's I totally accept it as kind of part of life, and um, I do sometimes get asked, "How do you feel?" Especially with what happened to my brother Nathanel. How do you feel about the fact that your kids will go to the army? And I always say, um, it will. I won't sleep for those years. If they're if they're in combat or anything, I won't sleep for those years, but I'll be incredibly proud.
But you also have 3 girls, not boys.
Yeah,
So that is a bit of a difference in Israel.
yeah.
So, not saying that they won't go to the army, but I'm just saying, like, not all girls go to the army, especially not in combat in Israel. That's much more
Yeah, so I
unlikely
think
to happen.
one question I get is will you encourage your kids to do Shara Leumi instead? Shara Leumi is a program for religious girls, not only girls actually, but for people who, for various reasons, aren't going to do the army, but they're still going to do a national service. And I always say, if that's what they want to do, then I will support that. If they say, I want to be in intelligence, I'll support that. And if they say, I want to be in combat, I will be petrified, but support that.
Wow. So my question isn't about your daughters, maybe it should have been, but my question is about you not doing the army, and did you feel like a type of, like, difference from your brothers because you were the only brother that didn't do the army?
Um, no, I mean, I'm very proud of them. Very proud of my two brothers. In fact, my older brother now, he's actually still in Middlewim, despite everything. He's in Middlewim now, and he's really doing incredible work.
Wow.
And yeah, I'm incredibly proud of them. And I think my parents always raised us that each of us go in the path that we feel we need to go, and they've supported us. Sometimes, if any of us has made a wrong turn, we'll eventually make a right turn. But they have supported us. It's very instilled in our upbringing that we do what we feel is right. We do each child is different, and each does what it feels right. I kind of had this urge when I was in yeshiva to go back and serve the community in England, and that was really the one of the things that held me back from making Aliyah, and that also meant not doing the army. So I was able to give to the community in another way, and I think that's really like the story of this war is every soldier, very simply put, is a hero, but all their wives are heroes, all the people delivering food to soldiers are hero. There's so many, I call them everyday heroes. There's so many people in this country that are serving the war effort, that
100%.
without wearing the uniform, without carrying the rifle. So I kind of, for me, yeah, I try and give um any way I can. I did actually recently look into joining the army. There is a program to join the army. I was told I was not
Shlabet.
Haredi enough. Shlabet. I went to the Tel HaShomer offices, the recruitment offices. I had a Savashon. I went, had an interview, and they called me up a couple of weeks later, and they said, you have to be Haredi. So
That's
I,
so
I
weird to me
now,
because my
yeah.
doctor just went to the army and he, like, lives in Nana and he's super modern and I don't get it. That's so interesting.
I
And now
answered Yeah, well, I think I answered the question of what yeshiva are you in, incorrectly, which is I'm not. That
Alright.
but anyway, like, that was kind of just to see, um, but yeah, I feel proud that I try and, contribute in, whatever way I can, and I think that's really the story of this country, that people, army, not army, contributing however they can.
You're so used to being interviewed in the media. I like hear it as it comes out, you know? Um, you're very like
This is much more fun, much less stressful.
awesome, awesome. So, okay, so I want to go back to your childhood, right? Because first of all, I didn't know that you had an older brother. I do remember meeting your sister and her husband, and obviously, I know who Nathanel is because he's a war hero, and he's your brother. And I'm gonna go back to the story of like everything that happened on October 7th, but like I do remember my mom calling me up and being like, Elliot went to the hospital and like can't find his brother. Like, that was one of the first things that I remember because my mom is very, very, very close to your mother-in-law, and so she, like, was talking to her a bunch, at the time. But in terms of going back, so you have 3 siblings.
4. I'm the middle of 5.
Wow, I
We
did not
have
realize that.
Yes, I'll take you through them. We have, Gabby is the oldest. Then we've got Daniel, who I mentioned, who's been a middle. I'm the middle child. Um, then there's Miriam, who is the one remaining in England, and then you've got Nathaniel. Nathaniel is
Wow, so
13
he
years
was a
younger than
baby.
me. My mum was pregnant at my bar mitzvah with him.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, he's much younger than me. Um, Especially as he got older, we became kind of just very good friends. I stopped seeing the age difference, probably, once he was like 15, 16. And he started to, become more of a more mature and deep thinker and that kind of thing.
Are you close to all your siblings? Or, like, did you feel that you were closest to Nathaniel?
We're very close knit. I mean, we're all close. We're all kind of a little bit different in our personalities and where we've gone in life, up to now. But we're all very close. We have each other's backs. Obviously, after Nat was killed, um, the focus was all on my parents. My parents were actually on vacation in France, so um, they lived in
Wow.
England at the time. They were on vacation in France, so we had to get them from France to London to Israel, and that was the focus. And as a family, we had, each of us had kind of our skills and connections and whatever to make it happen. And I don't just mean the siblings. I mean all the siblings in law, all the spouses, as well, played this incredible role because they were also grieving, but especially during Shiva, they were not sitting Shiva. So my wife, Rena, was really amazing, and her family as well got really involved. And I can go on about the in-law families. Really, they were all amazing, inspiring, really.
Wow, that's awesome. Where do your siblings live now? So Miriam is still in London.
Yeah, Miriam lives in London. Daniel lives in Bat Yam,
Cool.
and Gabby lives in Ranana.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay, cool. So back to your story. So Natanel was your mom was expecting him at your bar mitzvah. So what is the age difference with Miriam?
So I think there's 6 years between me and Miriam, and 6 years between Miriam and Nathanel.
Oh, okay, cool. Very nice.
There's
Okay.
18 years between Nathanel and Gabby. So actually, when Gabby was hanging out with
Wow.
Nathanel was when he was a baby, people, sometimes thought she was a mother, basically, because 18
Wow.
years. There are 18-year-old mothers in
Yeah.
England.
Um but anyways, what were you like though as a student like in high school? Like what was your high school experience like?
Depends who you ask, really. If you ask me, I was amazing. I was a perfect student. But I think I was kind of regular, very cheeky, very cheeky. Definitely a little bit of chutzpah in there, like most people who went to Hasmonean. I hope people from Hasmonean don't mind me saying that, but they'll probably cheer that. Yeah, I very just generally, I was definitely very polite. My parents were very, typical British, very big on politeness, and I, obviously still think it's important. But I also had the little bit of chutzpah with teachers. As one instance where, for a little bit of a laugh, a teacher was making fun of a student, which most people would say it's not good practice. But I think that he took it too far, and then I yelled out something about the strange shirt he was wearing, and then he took me aside and asked me not to bully the teacher, and that was a whole thing. But stuff like that.
You stood up for what's right.
I think that the nice way of putting it is that way. Yes, if you want to judge me favorably, you can say I stood up for what I thought was right. Um, and if you want to be most people, you could say, that was a bit chutzpah. But yeah, I like to have a bit of fun. I got very into sports, specifically football, which you might call soccer. Watching, playing is very much my outlet. Also, playing a video game called FIFA, which I didn't play for many years, but I actually inherited from Nathanel. His PlayStation. My family all agreed that I should be the one to have his PlayStation. So I every so often have friends over for a game, and they actually I did a tournament with Nathanel once, like with my friends in Nathanel a couple of years ago, and he won the tournament. So um, I kind of have a good excuse for having a games console in the house.
Nice. That's awesome. Okay, so let's go to after yeshiva. So after yeshiva, you went back to London and you were there for a bit, and you were like living in the same house as Nathaniel and Miriam then because you were right? If I'm like understanding correctly.
Yes, I think Gabby also was living there a lot of the time. Gabby made Aliyah actually 2 weeks before me. Um, my family aren't so into sports, and Natanel, wasn't very into basketball and also football. So like that was a passion we shared. I spent an exorbitant amount of money taking him to an Arsenal game once, and that was kind of a little bit our bonds, just
You were like
watching
the cool
sports,
big
playing
brother.
FIFA. Um, I would like to think that that's how he would describe me. Yes. But but he also
um
had, he had my other brother Daniel's also the cool big brother, and he was the one who would be, and obviously he had an influence on him because Nathaniel chose to follow in his footsteps. And they're also actually both quite similar in personality, and they're both very artistic and everything. So they also shared a bond, and Nathaniel also looked up to him a lot. I think Nathaniel really was someone who got on with everyone, family, friends, really really got on with everyone.
do you feel that Dan and Nathaniel like were a bit more rebellious than you and a little bit more like because it sounds like you were pretty like the polite, nice kid, and they seem to be a little bit more
They
umph.
yeah, they definitely got more in more trouble than me. I mean, I think that that story I mentioned earlier about the teacher. I mean, that's kind of minor. I don't know if I have permission from Daniel to tell you the sort of stuff he got up to, but yeah, I was a bit more the goody two shoes out of the brothers.
So, what is one story that you can tell us about Nathaniel?
So I think Nathaniel was someone who really I mean, there were a lot of stories I've heard in the past year. That song, "You Don't Know What You've Lost Till It's Gone." So that really, we've heard these incredible stories. I'll say a couple of things. So one thing is that he had very strong kibbud abayim, and he was very close with, very, very close with my mum. I don't know many other 18, 19, 20-year-olds who really call their mum almost every day. But really was very, very close with her and loved buying um, gifts. So he loved he giving, my sister said that for Rosh Hashanah, he got like some sort of Shailachag, some sort of gift voucher from the army, where you can use it kind of in all these stores. And he just called up my sister, and I had two daughters at the time. My sister had two daughters, and just said, Gabby, what was sending pictures of sneakers. What sneakers do your kids want? I've got the Shailachag. I want to buy your kid something. So he's just like a very giving person. at the funeral, actually, one of Nathanel's close friends came, and they had in the summer been. Nathanel came to London. He had just finished training, and he knew he was going to be on the Gaza border, and he managed to get a month in London. And during that time, he went to Amsterdam with some friends. And in Amsterdam, apparently, he was agonizing over these fridge magnets, like really cute, nice, artistic fridge magnets that he wanted to buy my mum. And apparently, he was agonizing over which one. And sadly, he never got to give them to her. But at the funeral, this amazing girl Abby came over to my mum and said, this is a gift from Nathanel. So, I mean, there's a story of him buying a friend. A friend was actually, I think it was on that trip. One of the friends was stranded, um, in I think Amsterdam, and while he was on the phone to her, just went online and bought her with his own money the flights. Um,
Wow.
and I don't know exactly with what money, but that's kind of like the sort of person, just like when you know something is right, you do it. You don't think about it. And that was him. And he was also, definitely had a cheeky side. We often did a lot of play fighting, me and him. Um, Up to around the age of 15, I would win. And then at some point, it turned. I mean, if you've seen me and you've seen him, you can see what I'm talking about. He was very built and strong and muscly, and as you can see, I am not. So he also had that very playful side to him, and also loved people. Just was always with people. When he was off the army, I think he wouldn't do what most soldiers do, which is eat and sleep. He would make sure to see his friends and make sure to see us.
So the reason that I'm asking about like his rebellious side, right? Because I do remember that you said somewhere, I think it was when I was at the Shiva, that he was really like coming into his own at the time of
Yes.
like when he was killed. So what did you mean by that?
So um high school was uh not for him, I guess. It was a challenging for him. He navigated it pretty well. In high school, he also figured out that he's very into music, and he became a DJ, and was DJing parties and making a decent amount of money from it.
Oh, well, that's where he got the
Um,
money to pay for the flight.
I assume so. I mean, yeah, we've joked in the past year or so. We've joked, Nathan always talked. He always said, "I want to be rich one day," and then he would often say, "And when I'm rich, I'll buy my mom a house." Uh, that's what he often said, and we often, looking back, say, well, he always would have spent that money on other people, so I don't think it might never have happened, because he was a very giving person. But yeah, he DJ'd. I've just recently managed to kind of get hold of all his music, which I'm going through now. um but there's a lot of music to go through, but he's was very talented DJ. And while school was challenging, I mean, I think it also was a time where he figured out, sitting down and reading literature is not necessarily for me, but actually, I like,
And he got up in
I like
DJing.
DJ. Yeah, I like DJing, and I like, he also liked being able to share knowledge with people. So I have had a really high amount of people who've introduced themselves, and some have said I knew Nathaniel really well, and we sat down and did music together, and he gave me some tips, and we became good friends. But others who said, I remember him because I just spoke to him for a second, and he mentioned he was DJ, and I said I'm working on that too, and he would just give people tips and
Wow.
um, you know teach others. So I think while he had that, like, quite rebellious high school side, while he was in high school, he used that time um, to kind of figure out what he liked, and the two things were really music and joining the army. And the army is something he spoke about since he was 10, 11.
So it's interesting to me because he wasn't so religious as we had spoken about. And I know that a lot of people join the army that aren't religious. Obviously, I'm not, saying that being religious equals joining the army. That's insane. But
Mhm.
like, from a Datilumi perspective, right? As someone that's Datilumi, we're very used to, okay, people are become religious, okay, or people become more religious or whatever, and then they go to the army from religious values. That didn't seem to be his case. What pushed him to go to the army?
So, I mean, I'll say firstly, on religious values, I believe that there are many people who are not religious but have very religious values. So, someone might not tick that religious box, but come Pesach time, they're throwing out more stuff, more pasta and everything, like probably much stricter than me. So, I think he had very deep religious values and understanding that Israel is his home. And I think, like I said, like my parents had this very that they really taught us um that you go your own path. They're proud of each of us, and if one of us says this is a path I want to take and this is what feels right to me, then they have given us the space.
Wow, so nice. So going back to your path, because I do want to focus a little bit more on you. So you were in yeshiva, then you went back and helped with Bnei Akiva, then you made
Yeah, I
Aliyah.
was involved in B'nai Akiva, and then an organization called Tribe, which is basically an organization under the chief rabbinate.
Oh, cool.
So,
And then
yeah,
you made Aliyah when you were 24. Okay,
23 actually.
23. So where did you move to when you made Aliyah?
I've always been in Jerusalem.
Oh, okay, cool.
Um, yeah, I came straight to Jerusalem. I was in Nachlaot for a few years, and then when I got married, my wife was already living in Baka. I liked the area, um, so we found a place
Did
in
you like
Baka.
Nachlaot?
I love Nachlaot. Nachlaot is an interesting place. I worked in Tel Aviv some of the time, so I'd walk, around 8 o'clock. I walk past. There'd be like these like crevices, which are like maybe coffee shops, maybe just a room, maybe someone's apartment. Like always, just a lot of open doors and people playing guitar and like. I would sometimes just like walk in for like a few minutes and just hear the music and smell the marijuana. Did not smoke marijuana, but it was really I liked it. I like just hearing random people, playing music from the soul.
So
I was not
funny.
someone myself who would kind of just sit on the street and play music and smoke and whatever. But I kind of liked seeing other people doing it, and I met some interesting, really, really interesting people. I can have a couple of Nachlaot stories. One is when I signed my place, I found a really nice apartment, and the
Wait,
catch
where?
was in Nachlaot, in
No, but
in
where in
like Nissim
Nachlaot?
Bechar, Nissim like off Nissim Bechar,
Okay, cool.
and the catch was that every Tuesday night, I think the first thing they said was there's a free cleaner that comes once a week. And I was like, that's weird, but great. But the next thing they said, the reason why there's the cleaner is because every I don't know if it was Tuesday night, but once a week, there's a Rav from Aish that comes and gives a share. It's been going on for years, and the person who runs it is moving out. You're taking their room, but the share has to go on. So I said, cool. And I often wasn't there. I think at the time, I had like my Krav Maga class or whatever. So like, I often wasn't there, but like I thought it was super cool that like there's a share in my house, and like I am hosting a share without having to do any work. Um, and that was like very very nachlot. I mean, I had every type of Shabbat meal. You can imagine. But yeah, no, I really for single guy, especially even married, highly recommend. The other story is that a famous singer called Alex Clare, famous British singer called Alex Clare, um, lived there. And I was at the time involved with a tour organization that was bringing kids from England for like many weeks at a time. Like they were coming, I think it was like a 9-week program. There were 2 a year. And I was involved, and like I sometimes would have them in my apartment for like when they had their Shabbat in Jerusalem, I'd bring them to my apartment for like a tish or whatever. And I managed to get Alex Clare, who, at the time was like this inspirational person who was like one of the very few religious singers who has a #1 single in many countries. And I told him someone's coming. He showed up and it was like amazing for these 14-year-olds to speak to
Cool.
him and everything. Um,
Wow, that's awesome. It's so funny to me because I lived in Nachlaot, for 6 months, and I always say that those were the worst 6 months of my life.
oh,
I
really?
Yeah.
If you live in Accra, you kind of those things just happen.
So
Um,
for me, I was not into it. I'm like, I am
yeah.
way too straight-laced. So, okay, how did you meet Rena?
I have a friend, and she has a friend who at the time worked in the same office in the Jewish agency, if you must know. And um, I think they were just chatting about the people they know, and they said, let's get these two people on a date. And the person, my friend, she's the sister of a very close friend of mine, who basically her home was my second home in England, so I really trust this person, Samantha. And I said, if Samantha says, I'm in. So I did it, and yeah, I never looked back. You've
Wow.
met her. She's amazing.
Rena's great. That's awesome. Okay, and then you got married. Your wedding was awesome. It was a really
Thank
nice
you.
wedding. I remember it. Yeah, I actually have magnets still from your wedding on my door.
Here.
So okay, and then you had 3 kids.
Yes.
So
We've got Emunah, Hallel, and Nili.
very nice. I feel like there are always like themes with the names, right? I feel like Emunah, Hallel, and Nili are like very thematic.
Yeah, I mean, the names each came on their own, but Nili, was very connected to this situation. Nili stands for Nesach Yisrael Lo Yishaker. It's a pasuk in Tanakh, and we felt also it begins with a nun, and her middle name is Nechama, which means comfort, which also
Well,
begins with a nun, and Nathanel begins with a nun. And short of calling her Nathanella, we felt that that was the name that came to us. Really, really came to us.
beautiful.
Uh, we also a few weeks before she was born, me and Rena took a day in Zichron Yaakov in the north, and basically Nili was also an underground organization in the establishment of the state, and all the members lived there, and there's a street called Nili, there's a restaurant
To the
called Nili.
restaurant. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So like we were like, this is a sign, Nili it is.
Nice. Wow. Wait, but can you translate Netzach Yisrael Lo Yisraker?
Yes. It really means that the victory of Israel will never lie. And the way that I understand that is that um, we have to remember that eventually we will win, we'll be victorious. The rest of the world will see we deserve to be here, and will eventually be victorious. And I feel like, Nathanel was killed on the first day of the war, really with the start of the war. So we feel, he was part of the beginning. Him and all the soldiers that fell in those first couple of days, they made sacrifices that allowed, while kind of the country was figuring everything out, and troops were being sent all over Israel. He was him and the people that fell on those 2 days were really the start. They really saved a lot of lives, and also, their legacy, when please God we are victorious and we do win this war. Their legacy is that they were the start of the story. And
Wow.
every
No, for
every
sure.
soldier that sadly falls obviously has a legacy in kind of that realm.
So I want to go into your brother's story in a second. I want to ask you though, like until and I don't know if you'd feel comfortable, answering this, but until your brother was killed, was there anything else in your life that you felt was like super difficult or like that you would have said like was the hardest thing you ever went through before your brother was killed? Like, do you feel like you went through anything super hard until that point?
So I mean, I think, when we have challenges in life, we see those challenges and we say, I'm in a tough spot now. And but generally, thank God I've been blessed. And yeah, I mean, I don't think I've really had any challenges in life that can really compare, and all those challenges look like nothing compared to that. And also makes me grateful that actually, like, I had life quite easy until that happened. And I think that Yeah, I think a sudden death. I mean, I can't imagine what it's like, what it felt like for my parents, but it was a total shock to our system. Really, obviously came from nowhere, and it was really like a total shock. From that moment, I've just seen
Wow.
amazing, amazing, amazing things in this country. Those things have been a huge comfort, to I think all of us.
What has been one of those things?
I don't really know where to start, but I'll start with after the funeral, this guy comes up to me and he says to me, I'm David and I want to introduce myself. And then he tells me that his son was best friends with Nat. At the time, we didn't know actually where people were when they were killed. Like it was that kind of chaotic. So we didn't know if they were together or not on the day. It turns out they weren't. He says, my son was killed as well and he was buried in Hallel, I think, the next day. And it was important for me to introduce myself and to let you know that we are now family. He said it to me in Hebrew. I translated it for my parents. Um, and this guy, it's Adir Taha's dad, David Taha. He's an incredibly special man. I'm in very good contact with him. But then from there, I built this whole, we had this whole relationship with the whole of basically the Golani unit. There's every type of Golani WhatsApp group you can imagine. And when I had a baby, I don't think I said anything in the WhatsApp group, but I don't really do that. But someone said they're going to be so happy to hear. You have to say, you have to say. So I wrote, and people contacted me individually. Um, so yeah, that's one story. The other is as a family sitting Shiva in that first week of the war. Um, just the whole community. And when I say community, I don't even know if I mean my area, Baka, Jerusalem, or Israel. But we had kind of every type of person coming. I often looked up and saw people kind of sitting at the back crying, and I would say, "Tell me how you knew Nathanel." And they said, "We didn't know him, but we feel like we did." And and people, the most of the local restaurants sent food, and then from then sending food actually began a whole initiative led by two of my friends, Avi Stayman and Avi Goldberg, and from Mali Adimim. Avi Goldberg owns a property management company where people in America who generally don't live in their property own property here, and they were giving up their properties for people from the South um, to go and live in. And then we were sending all the pizza and all the close packages. I mean, the internet company, the water company, the taxi company, they all sent us. I don't know, where everyone's, I guess they all use their marketing lists to send us things. And then we were then able to send it to, I mean, my amazing parents, who I think kind of were doing it. They sent it to the like this basically the City of Gold offices, that the company's offices, and they were distributing it to the families who they were trying to rehouse.
Wow.
And they ended up doing the project in memory of my brother, and just all these like amazing things. I think one time someone came and he was a chassid and he really wanted to do something to help, and just then my older brother had gone to by Shabbat where Nathanel lived, and had brought back his tefillin. And I just said, okay, can you check the kosher? I don't think we exchanged details or anything. Eventually, I got hold of him, and he had got them checked for me. Just really like every type of person um, wanting to help, and I really could, we could do 5 episodes on just the things I've seen and the things that people have done for us. It's really special.
Was there ever a point of like, I know that the whole world wants to be there for me right now, but like this is my brother and I want to like hold it dear for a little bit, or like you were just like, go on, do what you want, like this is like a public death, everyone's like involved,
I
or
think, yeah, it's a good question. I think at the beginning of the war, I don't think any of us were really thinking. And um, Shiva, we became quite public. I remember, after Shiva, I felt I hadn't really seen my kids for a week, and I think the day after the Shiva finished, I think the kids still weren't back in school in kindergarten. So I think I was just like, okay, I'm gonna do a normal thing. I'm gonna take my kids to the park. And then I realized that like a lot of people now know me that like I didn't know. And I have also been sadly to shivers in my area. I went to a shiver in my area, and as I'm walking in, someone says, "Oh, I think I was at your brother's shiva," and I realize number one, I always try and remember people I meet, but there were really a lot of people, so I didn't remember them. So I felt bad, but also I realized that even if right now I want to be my kids. When I look back, those moments are really special to me. And when I look back, I say, it was amazing that I'm so happy that person came up to me and in the park or I was playing my kid and just said, we're still thinking of you. And looking back now, thank God, my life is pretty regular, whatever that means. And we're keeping going and continuing. And those moments are really memorable and really special
What
to
do
me that,
people still come up
so
to
many
you?
people. Yeah, I mean, I think there are people in the category of I know Elliot, but I never felt comfortable, didn't know the right words. And then, I was at a shul event the other night, and this guy said to me, "Listen, I feel terrible. I never spoke to you." And whatever, we talked about it, and it was nice for me, it was nice for me to talk about it. And he, do you want to talk? Do you not? And I said, I don't know. Let's talk, and I'll know at the end whether I wanted to talk about it or not. And turns out it was fine. And and I think that I look back and I think it's just so nice, and also for Nathanel's legacy that what he did for the country um, means so much to people. I mean, I think often that's the underlying message when I speak to people, and they're checking on me, but then they appreciate what he did so much.
Yeah. No, for sure. So, can we talk about a little bit about what happened on that day? Because we're like beating around the bush here about like we're talking about that day, but I want to know what happened on October 7th. How was he killed? What happened? I know that you guys went to Ashdod or Ashkelon. I'm not really sure of the details myself.
Yes, I'll start with. I guess I'll start with the moment we found out. Um, so like everyone in the country, we were confused in the morning. I knew that he was on the Gaza border, and I also have family that live in Ashkelon. So whenever there's rockets, the first people I think about, I'm like, you know, however traumatic this going to the Miklat, the bomb shelter once is, I'm sure they're spending the whole day there. So I'm thinking of them, and it's killing me that I can't just call them up and check on them. But as the day went on, and as I'm hearing bits of information, I'm like, okay, Nathanel is in this war. We've declared war. He is in this war. Um, he is defending us right now. I was in Shul. It's about a 15-minute walk away. And even though some people were leaving, I couldn't bring myself to leave because I was like, I've got to dance with the Sefer Torah and I've got to do tefillah. Everyone's crying. And I've got to, like, I couldn't bring myself to leave Shul. I was like, I was really davening. And then later in the day, around 4 p.m., we were just outside the building where I live, and the neighbor came up and he said, "My son-in-law just got called up. Um, there was an army base that was taken over. Obviously, we know now that it wasn't one army base. And then, the last couple of hours of Shabbat, really the hardest moments, really stressful. I was pacing, my mind was going crazy, and at about 1 o'clock, I had actually decided, despite Shabbat, I'm going to write him a message because I want him to know that just because I'm, the religious brother, he shouldn't feel that if he wants to call me or talk to me, if he has 5 minutes, he should do that. We found out later that he had already been killed by them.
How was he actually killed?
So
Do you know?
yeah, it did take quite a few months to find out, really get a clear picture. Even then, after we found out more information. Only now, like a couple of months ago, they started the official investigation. So we'll know even more, maybe. But we have more or less the story. For the first week until the Friday of Shiva, we actually thought he was in a totally different place. We thought he was on the Erez crossing. and we only found out through a friend who knows one of the two survivors from that battle. But they were on a base called Yiftach. It's near Zikim, so it's quite responsible for the safety of Zikim. Zikim was actually not infiltrated on the day. Sadly, people did lose their lives in that battle, but it was not infiltrated. And Yiftach is generally a non-combat base. It's mainly tanks, but it's a training base, and I think most of the people on the day were non-combatants or not so highly trained. And Nathanel thought they would be paired with Golani 13 with his unit, and 4 soldiers would be there. So him and 3 others were they call it Kitat Konono, which basically means first responder, and they would sleep in their gear and everything, and they would be called into action if anything kind of happens. They're the first responders. Early in the morning, gets woken up, and they say there's a soldier called Naama Boni, a female soldier who's at the Shingim, at the watchtower at the front of the base at the entrance, and she says, "I think there are terrorists approaching," and they sent these, I think, like 7 or 8 soldiers to the gate to check it out. I don't think that they realized that they were already there. They already were. It was basically an ambush, and there already were 20, 30, maybe more terrorists there. And there were a total, I think, of 8 soldiers together to fight. Everyone else was in safe rooms.
Wow.
Yoav Malayev was the officer in charge, and then Nathanel's commander, Gabriel Timenchko, was Nathanel's commander. Gabriel was shot in the leg, survived, continued fighting after he was shot in the leg. Nathanel was killed. Yoav was killed. Ido Harush, Yuval Ben Yaakov, and also Naama Boni, who had made the call at the beginning. Sadly, she didn't make it. And also Eli
Wow.
Basadeh, who's a very close friend of Nathanel, was also killed. I'll just say the story about Eli. His mother is a very special person at Nathanel's. So it's called a Masa. There's a Masa Kumtan, a Tekas Kumtan. It's like a 50-something kilometer walk overnight. It's like the end of your training, and there's a tradition that the family joins for like the last 5 to 10K of it. So me and my dad
You did it, right?
very early in the morning. I think there's some videos of it, but left at like 3, 4 in the morning. Got to the north. Everything Golani is in the north, so that's impractical. But anyway, went to the north. Mem, obviously, very proud moment. And Eli's mother, Limor, realized that for lone soldiers, even if they have family there, their families don't know what's flying. They don't know what to do. Like, what food do I bring? Like, what do I wear? Like, really, like, we have no clue. So she arranged these T-shirts for them that had their name on the back and, Kol HaKavod or something. These beautiful T-shirts, and she arranged them and took them upon herself. She's Israeli, and she just did it because she realized that it would be a need, and she's, there. And sadly, her son was killed, and she's a very special woman. And her and my mother have become quite close. I mean, there's a lot of stories of people I have become close with, people we have become close through this war. But anyway, yeah, they saved. Basically, it was one of the few bases that wasn't fully infiltrated. They saved about 80 lives, and we don't know. People from Zikim have also said that their lives were saved because of the actions of the people in Yiftach. So that's really the story. And it's hard, but they're real heroes. Those soldiers, they really quick as a flash, just jumped to save lives. I'll just say one more thing, which is, I've talked about Nathanel being giving. I mean, he was such a selfless giving person that actually, as he was preparing for battle and hearing gunshots, he called Gabby, who was living in Tel Aviv at the time, and said, "Listen, I hear there's rockets in Tel Aviv. Are you okay?" That was like his last phone call. So that's kind of like, the sort of person he was. And we were actually at the base where it happened and saw where everything, we were,
Wow.
shown around where everything happened.
That must have been so crazy to see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That must have been really like
Really,
intense.
really crazy. But I think it painted a picture of, the heroism that occurred that day.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Anything But Traditional. It is so important to hear the stories and truly internalize who these Hayalim were that have been killed since the start of the state of Israel and also in the past year and a half. Every single Hayal is fighting for each and every one of us. Please thank them, take the opportunity to hear their stories, go to Har Herzl, go to the cemeteries that are local, that have people from your community that have been buried there. May we truly know no more pain and no more suffering, and may we only have complete peace. I want to just share that the podcast is Baruch Hashem coming back. This is the start of many more episodes to come. I'm so excited. Meira Weber is editing my podcast and it's truly amazing. So thank you, Meira, for making the sound awesome. And if anybody wants to buy an ad or sponsorship opportunity or wants to work together, please feel free to reach out. Until June, I'm having a really awesome deal that everything is 50% off. And if you go on the website, you can see all the sponsorship and ad opportunities. The website is tales-of.com. And I look forward to working with you. Remember, I'm a social media manager and a content creator, and can't wait to speak with you. All the best, and I hope that this episode continues to inspire you. Thank you, Nathanel Young, for everything that you have done for Am Yisrael.
As soon as Yom Tov Shabbat went out, we were calling around frantically. Someone had called my mum. One of his men called my mum and said, "I found out from someone that he was injured and taken to hospital." So we continue to call around. There's a number you can call. That obviously we're not the only people calling, but there's a number you can call to find out, if someone's been injured, to find out where they are. And they told us he's in Ashkelon. They said, call Barzilai Hospital in Ashkelon. We called Barzilai Hospital, and they said, he's here. He's in the emergency room. And I said, what condition is he in? They said, we're not allowed to tell you over the phone. And I said, are the roads open to Ashkelon? And they said, just get here. So I'm thinking, he's not in a good way, but I'm going to go. It was a hard moment for me and my wife, my Rena. I'm very grateful that she gave me her blessing to get in the car and drive, an hour and a quarter to Ashkelon when, at the time, we didn't know if there were terrorists roaming the street of Ashkelon and there were rockets there and everything. And I packed an overnight bag, went to Ashkelon, drove to Ashkelon. As I'm getting like Ashkelon, Ashdod, I'm just seeing the rockets over my head. It was a very surreal moment. I run into the hospital. I say Nathanel Young, and they say he's not here. And I said, well, I was told to come here, so he is here. And they said, no, he's not. And then I said, so where is he? So they said, 1 second. Anyway, I had 2.5 hours of me running after people and them saying, I'll be with you in a second, and then never seeing that person again. I do not blame anyone for a second because they were under a very high stress situation, and I think it was a crazy situation. I had 2 amazing people in the hospital. There was one who was an army psychologist who was sent to the hospital to kind of just see if anyone needed help, and he spent many hours with me that night. I don't think at the time I needed psychologist itself, but I barked orders at him and he barked orders at someone, and they came back to me and told me we don't know. But it was having him there, and I think at one point, he forced some very sugary drink down me. So I got there about 10, maybe around 11. This kind of middle-aged guy in uniform comes and he stops hanging out with me and talking to me, and I start barking orders at him too. And at the same time, I feel a decent amount of pressure. My family whoever's not in Israel is obviously not keeping Shabbat. It was Yom Tov second day. It was not keeping Yom Tov. Um, and and Also, by the way, when I got to the hospital, I got a text from my mom because I just said I'm on the way to Ashkelon. I saw the message from my mum when I got to the hospital saying, "Elliot, don't go. It's not safe." Luckily, I didn't see the message and I got there. But this other man in uniform, I didn't know the time. I found out later on in the night that his role in the army is actually to inform when someone. It's one of the worst jobs in the army, but to inform the family when their loved one has been killed. Um, so at 12:30, I see them both kind of walking around whispering, and I just say, "What's going on?" And they say, "Give me a minute." I think in that time they made a phone call, and then they sat me down and said, "Listen, your brother's been killed," and I couldn't believe it. In my head, I had gone there to see him, and I said to them, "All right, I've got to tell the family." And they said, "You can't." And I said, "Why not?" And they said that army protocol. It's a very it's a protocol they're very proud of, but they send the unit to the family. Now, because he was a lone soldier and moved to Israel on his own, and my parents weren't living there at the time. My sister was actually listed as his next of kin, so she is the one that has to be informed. They got special permission to tell me, but they said until they go to her house, we can't. You can't tell anyone. So I said, firstly, I'm telling my wife. So I called my wife, told her, and then um, so when are they coming? They said probably they're really going to start informing people probably tomorrow. Um, And I said, tomorrow morning, tomorrow afternoon. I said, you know, I said, it's not possible. I said, I really need to tell them. Somehow, um, and I think this might have been also a turning point in my Israeliness of being more pushy and Israeli. And I mean that in the nicest possible way to Israelis, because it's a very good attribute, positive attribute,
100%.
most of the time. And I said, listen, I said I'll give you half an hour, and then they somehow got within half an hour. They got, and it was a hard half an hour for me because everyone's calling me, and I kind of went silent. Um, and they went to Gabby. They told her. I think everyone was a bit in shock. So then her husband, my brother-in-law, called me and said, "Elliot, did they tell you anything now?" And I said, "Did they tell you anything now?" And then we said, "Okay, we know." And then my sister and I together did like a conference call with my parents. We did, really, really I think the hardest thing of this whole story is when we both had to tell my parents, who are on vacation in France. And then we had to kind of just figure out, all the logistics.
Did you have to plan the funeral or the funeral was planned for you?
So yeah, I mean, the army really took care of everything. There were certain things they weren't sure if they were going to be able to live stream it, but generally they were awesome. The army were awesome. Actually, there were two people from the army who arrived onto the plane that my parents were on and escorted them off the plane before anyone else came on, and they got, really were treated amazingly. And yeah, the army really took care of everything. I think that we had usually, the soldier would get buried in the area, kind of the area they live. Because he was a lone soldier, we managed to have him buried in Har Herzl, which I think was the one thing that like we all straight away could agree on. Not that we disagreed on anything, but just kind of making these decisions was quite overwhelming, and that was something that was a very easy decision because Herzl's always been kind of quite a special place to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they really took care of everything. They organized, a hotel for my parents to stay in. Also, the community, my sister Gabby wanted to be in Jerusalem for most of Shiva Week. Someone who I did not know at the time, an amazing person, just gave up. I think, I don't know. There was a spare apartment,
Wow.
stayed in the apartment for the Shabbat of Shiva. My parents, the hotel was quite far. So, someone said, there's an empty apartment next to me, stay in that apartment. So the army and Israel and everyone really took care of us, thank God. And, also the ceremony, even very little things like at a military funeral, there are gunshots, and they told us, especially my parents, several times that there'll be gunshots so they could be uh, prepared, because if you don't know there's going to be gunshots and your son was just killed, might be quite overwhelming. But just these little things. There was a siren at the funeral, and there were actually three. My two sisters and my wife were all pregnant, quite heavily, and the Magen David Adom medics were there in a flash to check that they were okay, and weren't suffering from anxiety attacks, panic attacks, or anything. So
Wow.
we really, yeah, everyone took care of us. I mean, it was incredible to see, and you have to remember, this was in the country's most vulnerable time, in any recent history, where no one has any idea what tomorrow is going to be, and despite that, more or less, they were able to really look after us. And the births, I think, did us all a world of good. It was really something to look forward to, and I think for my parents especially, I think, people talk about um, the wink or the hug from Hashem, and we really felt that. I guess God knew this was going to happen. He already decided before it happened what we would need to kind of get us through. So we're very grateful.
It's like he brought the refuah before the makkah.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
I'm just curious. You had another brother and a sister. Like you had Dan and Gabby in Israel.
Yeah.
Why didn't they go to Ashkelon?
Oh, it's a good question. So Daniel was already in the north. He was sent to the north in the morning. He got to the north, and then we had told him. So he was actually very helpful because he has the army contacts. He's been doing reserves, Midwim, for 20 years, and he was also trying to find out what might have happened. And then when he was staying in the north until when we told him, he went to at the time my sister Gabby was living in Tel Aviv, and Gabby was expecting twins. She had the babies in December. It was in October, and as a family, we said, no way you can put. We have no idea what you're going to see. What we and her husband, and I agree with him, said, there's no way you're putting that kind of stress on yourself. So yeah, and I went and we didn't really. It wasn't like we talked who's got to go. I just said
You're like,
very
I'm going.
quickly, I said, listen, he's in Barzilai. I'm going. I'm fine going on my own. Friends and also my brother-in-law as well, from Rena's side. People did offer to go with me, and I just said, I think for many reasons, safety and whatever, I think this is just something I'll just do on my own. If I need anyone, I'll let you know. Um, and like I said, thankfully, I had support at the hospital. I had those two people looking out for me. But yeah, it was really, it kind of made sense, and it was also the right thing.
So I know that your kids were very close to him. I also know that not only your kids, but I'm sure all of your, nieces and nephews, and then also I know Sarah's kids, who is your sister-in-law, and your brother-in-law Ari. I know that their kids were very close to him, and
Yeah.
they looked up to him. So I mean, how was that telling all of these kids that Nat isn't coming home?
So, I mean, I'll tell the story of my children, and then I'll also talk a bit about all the other kids you mentioned, and it's actually quite it's a little bit freaky in a way that they really only recently before he died, the in-law families only had recently kind of built this connection with him. But my children, at the time I had a 2.5-year-old, 4.5-year-old. Already she was just two, the little one, and it's two very different things. Tending a 2-year-old and a 4.5-year-old. We decided we've got to let her know for many reasons. One is because it's going to be a weird week and there's going to be a lot going on, and she has to know that it is going to be what it's going to be. Um, but also, it's her uncle that she has a very close connection to. He was when he was here, he was building tents with them, playing with them outside, taking them to the park. Um, and we said to her, we said, Nathanel was hurt, and he didn't get better from it. I mean, I'm paraphrasing. Rena did the talking. I don't remember exactly what was said, but something along the lines of, "We're not going to see him again." I think maybe the words, "He is with Hashem," and um, we're all going to be sad this week, and it's okay to be sad. And mommy and daddy are going to be sad, but it's okay. And if you're sad, you can speak to us. And then over time, she kind of filled in the gaps of "He's a Giboy Yisrael," and we have those bumper stickers, and she gives them to friends sometimes, and really she's very proud of him. Also Emunah, she like randomly just like stops what she's doing and sings Hatikvah and stuff like that. So she's kind of like, just, I don't know if that's connected to Nathan or not, but like she's like very proud. We've got talking to her friends about her. But also, we were in a war and there were still sirens. And I think that was also hard for the girls to have lost their uncle and their sirens, and they're trying to put it together. We kind of had to make it clear to them that, you know, the siren is not connected in well, it obviously is connected to Nathanel a little bit, but he wasn't killed by a siren. It happened far away, and that you were safe. So it was, one is helping them deal with their loss while we are also dealing with the loss, but also making sure that she realizes she is safe, that the kids realize they're safe. Um, for Hallel, who was two at the time, I think the focus is on, she won't really remember him, but we talk about him, we tell stories, and we made the decision to, because we want her to remember him and know. And then obviously for Nili, as she grows older, we'll talk about him because she's a big part of the story. So that was like my kids. I can't I think for Gabby it was similar, but I can't really speak. Also, her kid is 9 months older, her oldest, and there's a big difference in understanding as well, I think, even just the 9-month difference.
Yeah.
But the two of them
Yeah.
bond over it. They're very close. Liel, she's called Liel, and Emunah, and they talk about it sometimes. And they built tents once, and they were talking about how that's what they did with Uncle Nat, and I think it's very healthy. But
So
thank God,
cute.
all the kids, they're doing very well, thank God. As for Rena's family, the week before, so it was the first Shabbat of Sukkot, Nathanel had like the weekend off the army, and he had a friend who was in Jerusalem, and basically he didn't know he was going to be off the army. And I had already arranged, first Shabbat Sukkot, we usually do with Rena's family, and it was kind of too late to change. On Thursday, he said, "Hey, I'm in Jerusalem." Turns out I'm in Jerusalem. And I said, "Oh man, we didn't plan it." And I said, "Listen, no pressure." And I guess this is, the good thing about having a non-religious brother is, I said, "If you want, feel free to wander into Ma'ale Adumim anytime." And he said, "You know what? Maybe on Shabbat I'll come around 4 o'clock." I said, "Fine." and I didn't know if he would come because, he's with his, like, friends. I think the family who I've now met a few times, actually, the family that he was hosting him were family from America, and they actually had, said, "If we're gonna have soldiers, they need to be comfortable." They I think rented, like, a separate apartment for there was, like, maybe 3 or 4 soldiers, which was really, really beautiful, really nice. I thought, "Yeah, I don't know if he's gonna wanna come, and it's totally fine." 4 o'clock on the dot, knock at the door, he's there. Me and Now, we always gave each other big hug, and he was a very very big muscly guy, very huggable guy. And he came, he wasn't in uniform, but he had his gun on his around the shoulder. And Sarah, my sister-in-law, um she had five boys, and
The youngest was also
especially,
named after Nathanel, right?
yeah, the youngest, Yehuda Netanel, the youngest was named because he had a really big impression that Shabbat.
Yeah.
And then there's my brother-in-law, so Rena's brother Ari, and his wife Daniela. They're there with their kids. So there's a lot of kids, and he's not bothered by it. He sits on the couch, and basically they start asking about, especially the three oldest boys, and also the oldest girl Yael. They're kind of staring at him, and they're just asking him about his gun, about the army, about everything. One I think that there's twins, Yoni and Eli. I think they were very hard hit by it because, Yoni, especially, he wants to be in an elite unit, and he was really looked up to them. We played a game called Nerf, and we had a Nerf war. So Nerf is like this not real gun with, like, rubber, like felt, I don't know, soft pellets, soft bullets. We did a huge war. There were like 12 kids. I think a couple of neighbors came, and Nat was like leading the strategy side of it for his team, and I was not doing much for my team. And and it was like this very special, amazing Shabbat. That I think even at the time everyone was just like amazed he came and everything. And then we drove him back to Jerusalem. Rena was pregnant and not feeling so well, so she sat at the front. He sat in the back in between the two car seats, really squished. He's 6'4" or something, and as is Nathaniel, not complaining. And as I was driving back, he says, "Elliot, we're going out tonight." And I said, "Oh, I'm really tired." He said, "No, we're going out." I was like, "All right, if Nat tells me to go out, I go out." And I said, "What time? What time? Are you free till?" He's like, I'll just check when the last train is. I'll get the last train." Um, and I mean, I'm not talking about the impression he had on the nephews, but then we ran out and had, he was also talking about things, talking about Israel, talking about uh, dating, and just kind of starting to think about life. And I think the army made him I wouldn't say serious, but made him really think about things.
In that conversation, like, what did he say in terms of where he thought his life was heading? Was he dating anyone at the time? Like,
So he did not have a girlfriend at the time, um, as far as we know, but he did. Um, he had, he may have had his eye on someone. We don't know. We have our suspicions. Uh, I can't say more. I cannot say more. But I think, I think he was thinking about. I mean, one thing he was talking about was kind of, when I finish my army service, I'm gonna do this course and get into this elite unit, and was thinking about doing more. Also, I mean, we now know why, but it was pretty quiet over there. It was much quieter than he thought, and I think he was like a bit bored, and he was like, I want to do more. I want to do more. And then I think he was just talking to me about marriage, and how I met Rena, and how should people meet, and just like these questions, like, oh, I don't know. Would I want to meet my wife on a shidduch? Maybe that's good. But really, really, the bottom line is, he had such an impression on my nephews that they kind of told their parents, well, we're naming, she was pregnant. We're naming our brother after him. So they said, oh, okay. And he's beautiful. Yehuda Netanel, beautiful kids. Um, and and yeah, and I think we were there. for again the same Shabbat Sukkot 1 year on, and it was nice for them to be with us, I think, and talk about it a little bit. You know,
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so since that day, how has your life changed? What are things that you've added into your life or things that have just been different since he's been gone?
um, it's a really good question. I think that once I was giving a talk to a group and someone, I think 14-year-olds, uh, no, maybe 16-year-olds, and this girl asked me, "Have you changed?" And at the time, I answered that my circumstances have changed, but I'm still the same person. And then on the drive back, I thought about it and I said that there's no way we're all the same. We're all the same people. So I think, I mean, there are a few things. I think the first thing is my love for Israel. I mean, I always loved Israel, but really like the feeling of family and the way now I look at kind of the dynamic of this country as we used to think, or I used to say this country is very divided. I personally, and people will disagree with me, but I personally don't believe we are a divided country. I believe that we are a country of people with very different opinions and backgrounds and ideas and craziness, and those differences are really kind of what keeps this country going. So I have like very very different views on that. And then there's one thing is I'm on this podcast, but we kind of straight away from day one were asked to do media interviews, and then afterwards people asked um not just me but members of my family to speak. And then there's also ceremonies which we go to, which are very meaningful, where I often sit next to my dad and whisper the English translation of things. But we have, I think I'll only speak for myself, but I think that that was very scary. Speaking in public, and deciding whether I wanted to do it, and deciding each time, when I'm asked whether I want to speak, whether I don't, and figuring out what the impact is. So that kind of was a way I saw. I don't know if it's impactful. People have told me, and also when my mum speaks, I think it's very impactful. People are very inspired by my parents, not just my mum, my mum and my dad.
They also made Aliyah after your brother was killed, meaning it was in the plans, but they actually made Aliyah after he was killed, right?
Exactly, exactly. They made Aliyah 6 weeks after. We went to the airport, we cheered them, and my parents. I think they have this fighting, lively spirit, and my Simchat Torah. Both my parents are very adamant that we're going to celebrate Simchat Torah and dance and everything, um, and uh, um,
Beautiful.
and that's really, yeah. I mean that I don't know if that's called changing, but I think in terms of changing, I think I'm still figuring out. But seeing that we can have, and here I'm also speaking for my siblings, but seeing we can have a positive role from this tragedy, um, and there are things we could do that may be big, maybe small, that can help others. Me and my siblings have been involved in raising money in Nathanel's memory for various things, for soldiers, for the Lone Soldier Center where he lived. We're dedicating a bedroom, like basically we're dedicating his bedroom to the next soldiers that live there. And yeah, I mean, I think we've all kind of gone on a journey, and for me, it was kind of just seeing like that there are positives that can come out. There are things I can do. Some of them are like not that difficult and don't take that much time. That I can do in Netanel's name, or not in Netanel's name, that could make the situation a little bit positive.
Beautiful, beautiful. So is there I know that you're so positive about everything, but was there anything that anybody said or anybody did that you were like just like what the heck is happening or why the heck did that person say that or like was there anything that rubbed you the wrong way like since he's been killed?
Um, the only ones I would say are the media. It's very hard to read some, especially British. I don't know why, but I'm like I have the BBC app. I get the push notifications. I read it. I don't know why I'm punishing myself, but I think no. I think in terms of in the day to day in the country, um, I I really can't think. I think everyone's been amazing. Obviously, I have been. People talk about shiver awkwardness and not knowing what to say and leaving, and you feel like an idiot. I remember so many positive just shiver moments. People coming on their first day of shiver brachot to the shiver and things like that.
Wow.
Um, and at the same time, even though I have sadly, there have been a lot of shivers just in my area, and I have gone to shivers of a fallen soldier. And sometimes I've gone and someone close to the family has seen me and recognized me and said, "You have to go and speak to the brother. You have to go and speak to the sister." And I go, and in my head, I'm like, "Oh, I'm gonna be like super inspirational and helpful." And then I go there, and I'm like everyone else. I don't know what to say. So I totally get the not knowing what to say, seeming as me who lost a brother does not know what to say when I'm visiting someone who has lost a brother.
Wow.
Um, so I don't. The only thing is, yeah, the media, the BBC is the big one that I overread, and um, it's very sad. It's very sad. They should be ashamed of themselves. I actually um, I work next to the BBC, the BBC office, and I have met with them a few times. I was also interviewed by the
Wow.
BBC by a very nice, amazing woman from England who's pro-Israel. But yeah, it's very, very, very disheartening. And really the only people that have said things I don't like are the media. Everyone else, everyone else is amazing.
So to wrap up, where do you think your trajectory is going, right? Where do you see the trajectory of your work in this field going?
It's a good question. I mean, I have always been someone that outside of my work hours and my family hours, I always try and make sure I'm have time to do other things. It's not that difficult to find because of what happens in Nathanel. We raised money at the start of the war for for Golani soldiers who needed it. And then we found out that there was a need for his specific unit, which is actually called Partak 13, which is within Golani 13. It's like 60 soldiers. They lost 8 soldiers on October 7. They've had a few injured since then. Um, and, we're talking about 18, 19, 20-year-olds who have lost a lot of their friends. Um, and we raised the money, and then we got the gear from, I think most of the time it came from America. And then someone said to me, "Are you free tonight to go and drive it to them? They're near. They're not so far. They're I think one time it was off Hakim, one time it was near Beersheba. They're not so far." And I said, "Yeah, I mean, I'm free." So I think there's certain things that I'm not a sit down all day kind of guy. I sit down for my day job at a desk, but I like running around and doing stuff and that. So it's fun for me. It's not, I don't feel I'm doing this amazing thing, but I see there are just I can't tell you what the next thing is going to be, but there are these Natanel related things that come up that keep me busy, and usually helping someone. So yeah, I mean that's kind of where I see it. And my mom has actually become quite close friends with some of Nathaniel's friends, and had them Purim Suda, had them over,
Cute.
and there's a WhatsApp group, and she wrote in the WhatsApp group before Sukkot, if anyone needs a meal in a sukkah, come over. They don't care how people get there, drive, walk, camel, whatever. So yeah, like I think everyone in my family, like I said, my older brother's in Middlewim, absolute hero. So yeah, that's I can't tell you exactly what the next thing is. But there
Yeah.
always seems to be something somehow.
So do you have any other, you know, messages, anything else that you want to say, anything else you want to add to the podcast before we go into our very last question?
I think the only thing I want to say is, the people outside of Israel have also contributed amazingly. I mean, I there are some people who flew in on October 8th, which um, is, apart from not being easy to get a flight, I think is incredible. Is incredible. There were people who were here for the festivals for Sukkot and stayed, which I think is incredible. There are people sending their children to yeshiva and sem despite maybe the risk isn't high, but there is a risk. There is trauma from sirens and whatever, and I think it's incredible. And I think, you've asked me about what I do. I think everyone can contribute. I think everyone really is contributing. So I kind of this is kind of from let's just call me Israeli for a second. So from an Israeli to American English people outside of Israel, we appreciate it. Keep doing it. And whatever you can do, and we really appreciate it.
100%. So, to end off, Elliot, do you have a pasuk or a quote that motivates you, inspires you, keeps you going, kept you going through all of this? Maybe a quote that, or pasuk, or from Tehillim, or that you said when you were in Ashkelon. Like, is there anything that got you through it in terms of like a pasuk or a quote?
It's a good question. So I'm going to give two. One is the abbreviation of my baby daughter's name, Netzach Yisrael Lo Yishaker. That we're we're going to win. We're going to be okay as a country. Hopefully, hostages will come home. Please God,
Amen.
no more deaths. But we will be okay. So that is one. And the other is I love Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha. And I've talked about my parents a bit. They're very inspiring, and I think a few months after, maybe around Pesach time, someone brought up Simchat Torah. I don't know why, and my mum said, "We're celebrating Simchat Torah. We're gonna dance, and that's it." And so that's kind of my kind of thinking. And he was killed on Simchat Torah. I will be saying Kaddish every year on Simchat Torah. It's a very weird feeling. I haven't got to grips with it yet. It will probably take many more years. But how can I feed on the fact that he was killed on a day that has the word Simcha in? And I think that pasuk kind of says it. Like we try and find the happy moments in life, and thank God I have an amazing family. I have beautiful children. I have an amazing wife, and they bring me joy every day. And while there are difficult days and there are challenges, and this is really we're in a difficult time. The whole country is. That the happy times we can allow ourselves to enjoy, and celebrate and be happy.
Hakol zman ve'it. There's a time for everything.
Yes, that will be. I
As
like
they
that
say in
pasuk too.
Kohelet
Add that
on
in.
Sukkot.
Yeah. If I can have three, have that one too.
But anyway, thank you so much, Elliot, for coming on, sharing your story, sharing your family story, sharing a bit more about Nat. And it was really amazing to hear, everything. And I'm so excited to share this episode with the world. So looking forward to that. And thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Tamar. Thanks so much for having me on.
All the best.